Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have a very special guest. Christian Espinosa is a best-selling author of The Smartest Person in the Room. He explores the quest for validation and intellectual supremacy. His latest book, The In-Between: Life in the Micro, details his transformation from a competitive mindset to a compassionate global citizen. An accomplished entrepreneur, Christian founded and sold Alpine Security and now leads Blue Goat Cyber. Beyond his corporate achievements, he is a white hat hacker, keynote speaker, and adventure enthusiast with 24 Ironman triathlons and 2 7 Summits climbs under his belt. Christian, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lance.
Yeah. Before we get into what you do, what you're doing now, your transformation, all of that, tell us how you got here. Are you from a family of entrepreneurs? Are you the first? Where does that spirit come from?
So I read a study once that most entrepreneurs come from a family full of trauma and typically poverty. And that was kind of my scenario. I grew up in extreme poverty in a single wide trailer with a mother addicted to pain meds. And we're a small town in Arkansas. My mother was arrested a lot and wrecked cars a lot, and a lot of chaos and not a lot of safety and stability. So I think my drive came from this inner knowing that this sort of lifestyle wasn't for me, and I wanted to get out of that lifestyle. So I worked super hard to escape Arkansas, as I like to say, and escape my childhood. And yeah, that's definitely not a family of entrepreneurs. It's
Yeah.
kind of the opposite.
Christian, I'm much the same. I am very much the same as you. From a place of trauma, poverty, having money isn't everything, not having it is. That's sort of what I've
Yeah.
adopted. Mom and Dad used to say having money isn't everything, and that was just a cope, But when you don't have it, it's kind of everything. So thanks for sharing that. What do you think the biggest lesson that you've learned from starting and selling businesses is?
I think the biggest lesson I learned is really dialing in your niche market. In my first business, I tried to sell cybersecurity services to everyone, which diluted my message, and I effectively sold it to no one. Right now, with Blue Goat Cyber, my second cybersecurity company, I only focus on medical device cybersecurity. So our target market is medical device manufacturers. They're trying to get approval by the FDA or the EU MDR, which is equivalent of the FDA in Europe. So I've niched it down. So our messaging, everything about us is very specific. We resonate with our target audience, and I didn't do that in my first company, and it was a lot of struggle.
Yeah. I feel like that's a pretty common one that I hear a lot. People say, niching, and it seems counterintuitive, I think, when you're first starting out because you're so worried about just getting work, right?
Right.
Tell us about this. You have a 7-step secure methodology. Break that down.
Yeah, I'll go over the 7 steps real quickly. Effectively, what I noticed in my first cybersecurity business was 99.9% of my problems were because my staff lacked emotional intelligence. They were highly rationally intelligent, high IQ, but low EQ or almost no EQ. So I came up with this framework or this methodology to help with to help develop that emotional intelligence with my staff, and that's the 7 steps. The first step is awareness. I think everything starts with awareness. We have to have awareness of ourselves and of the world, and I tie a lot of neurolinguistic programming into my book, The 7 Steps. I'm a certified master practitioner with NLP, and as humans, we like to think we're very unpredictable. But we're actually very predictable from a neurolinguistic programming perspective, and we have a trigger that happens, and then all of a sudden we execute this program. And then pretty soon we've already done this thing, and it causes the situation to get worse sometimes. And from an awareness perspective, we have to be aware of those triggers and our response, and stop that response and have a new response which serves us better in that scenario. And that's what I talk about from an awareness perspective. It's one thing to have awareness, but we have to make the awareness actionable. The second step is mindset. I believe in a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset means, especially in my industry, people will say, I'm just not good with people. That's a fixed mindset. If you have a growth mindset, you may not be good at something, but you believe you can get better and you will take the steps to get better. Then that's part of the growth mindset. And Carol Dweck wrote a great book about that. The third step is acknowledgement. With me as a leader, I realized that I had a hard time acknowledging myself, which meant I had a hard time acknowledging my staff. And I think it's important to acknowledge ourselves and look at where we've gotten in life. I remember in 2005, I stood under the finish line of the Ironman World Championship. And I told myself I'd do that race someday. I had somebody take a picture of me, so I'm there under the finish line, just as a spectator. And then 10 years later, I ran across the finish line as a participant. So it's something that took me 10 years. But when I was running across the finish line, instead of like celebrating or like acknowledging myself or appreciating myself, I was automatically thinking about the next big thing to do. And I realized that my life was just kind of like on that treadmill of like the next big thing to do. I never like actually had gratitude for the moment. So that's step 3 is acknowledgement. Step 4 is communication. Communication is a big topic, but one of the presuppositions in NLP is that the meaning of communication is the response you get. And if we keep that in mind, that the meaning of communication is response you get, it shifts the ownership to you to alter your communication in a way that resonates and gets the response you are desiring from the person you're communicating with. In cybersecurity, a lot of other industries, we often blame the other person, and I think this is just human nature. If somebody doesn't understand us, we just say, "Oh, they just don't get it. They don't think like me. They're not smart enough, whatever." But the ownership should be on you to change how you communicate so they do get it. And that is extremely important. And then step 5 is a controversial step. It's monotasking. Monotasking is the opposite of multitasking. I think multitasking is BS, and it makes you super busy but not productive, and it also does not make you present. So I'm a proponent of monotasking, which is doing one thing with concentrated effort for maybe an hour at a time. You can figure out how much time you want to do it for in like time blocks. And that helps with 2 things. It helps you become productive and not just busy, because you make more progress if you're not constantly switching from one task to another and doing that context switching. It also makes you a better partner, a better employee, a better friend, because if you're present, you're monotasking with that person, they feel appreciated and understood. Today, I travel a lot and I'm at restaurants a lot, and I see people just on their phone and they're not even talking with each other. And it's got to be kind of insulting to be out to dinner with someone and they spend the whole time with somebody else on the phone. Basically, that's not monotasking. That's not being present. And then step 6 is empathy. I think in our world today, empathy is a hard thing because all we see is division. When we see people separate from ourselves, it's hard to be empathetic. There's Democrats, Republicans, whatever, pro-gun, anti-gun. There's all these factions, and we look at the faction like, oh, they are that versus they're a fellow human being. And with me, I almost died a couple years ago with blood clots, and I had this scenario, not really a scenario, it's when the doctor came up to me and told me I had blood clots. I was in the ER, and a friend of mine told me I should go to the ER because my leg was like really hurting. And she said I might have blood clots, and I was like, whatever, I don't, I don't have blood clots. I'm an Ironman athlete.
Yeah, you're an
I
athlete.
went anyway. Yeah, but I went anyway. And it's very interesting because the doctor came out and told me I had blood clots. He said I had 6 blood clots in my left leg. And as you can imagine, I was pretty freaked out about it. I didn't know what that meant. So I said, what does that mean? And he said, it means you could die or have a stroke at any moment. I'm like, I'm thinking my whole life is like going through my head. I'm thinking, man, did I live a good life? Is my life about to be over? And I started like crying. I was there by myself. My nearest family member was like in Denver and I was in St. Louis. And I think in an attempt to be empathetic, he said, oh, don't worry. I see this all the time. And it just like kind of pissed me off. I'm like, you know what? I don't see this all the time. This is a first for me. And I think the problem is he was seeing himself as the doctor, as me and this patient, that the division again, versus this is a fellow human being that just got some pretty bad news. Maybe I should approach it as if this is a fellow human being. And I think we all need to work on empathy. And it's the 7th step is Kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese word that means continuous and never ending improvement. And the challenge with any of these steps, anything in life, a lot of people are afraid to do something new or do something different because they may fail at it. But I believe as long as you're making progress, that's what matters. And adopting the mindset of Kaizen gives you the courage to start something, because if you're making the progress, you may actually get worse before you get better.
Mhm.
That's all that matters. In life, it's about progress. And I think progress makes most people happy.
Yeah, I would agree. Those 7 steps are beautiful. I really appreciate the look into empathy. There was a book I read recently, Train Your Empathy, that kind of changed my life
Hmm.
in that way. It just reaffirmed some things that I think I was doing right, and then confirmed some other things I was doing wrong. So I agree. I mean, it's very strange with the social media age about how it's kind of dehumanized people, and then we do split into
Hmm.
those factions pretty quickly. You've mentioned it a few times already about the extreme sports. I got to know why. How did you start getting into them, and maybe let the audience know like which ones you do. You know, you mentioned triathlon. I saw it looked like there was some ice climbing on your profile page.
Yeah, for some reason, I am attracted to anything with a waiver. If there's a waiver that says, you could possibly die or lose a limb, I'm like, I'm all into that thing. And maybe that's why I like entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
because, it's risky. And people think I'm reckless sometimes, but with anything in life, it's about managing risk. Like I skydive, and with skydiving, a lot of people think it's reckless. But if you're trained, you have 2 parachutes, you have an automatic activation device, which means if you're knocked unconscious, it will automatically deploy your reserve. If you have 2 altimeters, if you wear a helmet in case you run into somebody else in the air, you have to jump at the right people at the right altitude. I mean, there's all these things you could do to mitigate the risk, right? Same thing with cybersecurity, same thing as an entrepreneur. So I am attracted to these activities, I think, because they're risky, but for me, I feel like if I'm doing something uncomfortable, I'm growing and I'm learning something that applies to other aspects of life. Like even with mountaineering, there's a lot of teamwork involved with mountaineering, a lot of decisions you have to make, a lot of leadership involved with it. And some of those decisions mean putting your ego aside. Like if it's a crappy day to summit, maybe you shouldn't go summit because you might lose, your nose or your ear from frostbite. So there's decisions you have to make. And I think as we exercise those muscles of decisions and doing things that may have dire consequences, it's good for me. It's good. It makes me feel alive. Like the thing I'm doing now. You ask what extreme sports I'm doing now. I sort of shifted from Ironman triathlon. Right now, I'm doing a lot of go karting, and I'm
Interesting.
training for this F4 class in Austin, which is I'm going to be driving on the F1 circuit there in Austin. I didn't realize the last day of the class it culminates in a race, so I'm kind of nervous about the F4 race with a bunch of students that have just gotten trained. So I'm doing my best to get prepared. I drove a Ferrari 48 Evo Challenge in Las Vegas. I did like 40 something laps in that, working on my just how to drive, the mindset, the lines to take, how far to push the car, and all these things you have to consider. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love that you are uh, comparing entrepreneurship and extreme sports. I agree. Like you have to have this high risk tolerance 100% in order to
Yes.
do it. I mean, you're just so uncomfortable. You're just so comfortable with the uncomfortable parts of it. It's exciting. I agree. You seem like also a guy that probably has a morning routine. I would think so. You see, the way you're describing yourself and what I understand about you, it's a lot of discipline. It has to be going on, especially with extreme sports. Is there a special morning routine that gets you going every day?
I used to have a morning routine and I kind of fell off of it where I would write in a 5-minute journal every day.
Mm.
I still do that, but it's not consistent. I've been traveling like in the past, I don't know, 3 weeks. I was in Idaho, St. Louis, Las Vegas, Mexico, and Arizona. So I've kind of fallen off my morning routine. But yeah, I used to have one where I would take a cold shower to be uncomfortable as well. Even in the winter in St. Louis, when the water is like 33 degrees, I would still take
Mm.
a cold shower. And I do the whole thing cold. I didn't do any hot water. Uh, and then, do some burpees or something to kind of get my blood flowing. I still do that. And I'm in Arizona now, so the water doesn't get
Mm.
that cold, even if I have it on as cold as it goes. It's not very cold. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is writing out what I'm looking for to get accomplished in the day and what I'm grateful for. And I typically try to narrow it down to 3 things to get done during the day because it's hard to like take on the day or even know where to start when you have a list of 100 things. I just
Yeah.
say, what are these top 3 things that I'm going to get done today? And if I get those 3 things done, I'll feel pretty good about myself. And
Yeah.
that's my main focus right now, because I have a lot of things I'm trying to do with my company. I have a lot of things on my mind. So I'm just trying to, like, each day, what are the big 3 rocks, the biggest 3 things I need to move, and focus on those.
Beautiful. As someone of success, how do you define success, Christian?
I define success by being comfortable in your own skin with where you are in life.
Mm,
So with me, if I can get up and I'm comfortable with my health, my wealth, and my relationship, I look at those 3 lenses, then I feel successful. Yeah, if there's an area that's a little bit out of balance, I need to work on that. But it's really, it doesn't matter what other people think. It matters what I think in those 3 areas and how I feel in those 3 areas: health, wealth, and relationships.
yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Let's move into the books. What made you decide to write The Smartest Person in the Room, and The Root Cause for New Solution for Cybersecurity?
That was because of my first cybersecurity business. I was having a lot of struggle, like with anybody, any entrepreneur in their first business, I imagine. And when I zoomed out and kind of like looked at everything, I realized there's a common denominator, which is causing most of my problems. And that was my staff didn't have the emotional intelligence. And I was hiring people purely based on their technical skills and their certifications and their degrees and all this, criteria. And ultimately, what I realized, like I said, the lack of people skills and emotional intelligence was causing all my problems. It was causing problems with my clients, where my staff would speak over a client's head. I remember one of my engineers kept telling me that the client just didn't get it, meaning the client didn't understand the results of one of our ethical hacks or penetration tests against their environment. And he was saying it like the client's stupid. And I was thinking, man, this is not the kind
Mm,
of company I want to have, where my team is making the client, who's a healthcare provider, feel stupid for not understanding cybersecurity. And that's why I call it the smartest person room, because
mm,
I realize people want to be significant. And the way people feel significant in my industry is by being smarter than other people,
mm.
talking over their head, looking for opportunities to prove them wrong, listening for agreement versus insight. So yeah, I worked to shift the culture of my organization, and I did a lot of things. I did training. I brought in consultants. I did some. Every Thursday we met as a team to go over specific things, and what worked is what I wrote about in the book. And then I had to let some people go in the company. Not everybody wanted to change. And then I shifted my hiring process to look at people's cultural fit first and their emotional intelligence first. And only if they pass that criteria would I even look at their technical skills. It's like the technical skills mattered less to me uh, than the emotional intelligence and cultural fit.
Tell us about your new book, The In Between: Life in the Micro.
My new book is really a focused memoir about where I got things right and where I got things wrong, from the perspective of I'm somebody that likes to chase big things, or macro level goals, I call them. And I realized that I had this tendency, I still have it a little bit, I'm working on it. I have this tendency, or had it, to, when I'm going after this macro goal, everything between where I am and that goal, all these little micro moments, I sort of just put blinders on and ignored them. It even found them irritating. I just, I'm like, they were in the way of this goal. And that hyper focus on that macro goal caused me to have some relationships fall apart, so my wealth to disappear, my health to have problems. So I realized I needed more balance. And I also realized, once I got to a goal, like I mentioned, the Ironman in the past, I just thought about the next goal. And I was often at that goal by myself because I had those blinders on, and I realized I'm here by myself. I have nobody to celebrate with. What was the point of all that? But then
Mm-hmm.
I was in that routine of thinking, okay, what's the next big thing? And I found myself
Mm.
again, what's the point? This relationship fell apart on the way to this goal, and now I'm here by myself, So it's about having a little more balance and perspective and insight into those small moments, because I think those small moments, we can add value to other people's lives, but those small moments might impact us if we pay attention and realize that, even make us realize this big goal we're going after isn't something we really want to chase anymore. So it's about, having that balance. I'm not suggesting we don't go after big goals, but do it with a little more balance and intention.
Yeah, yeah. You seem to have a lot of self-reflection. Is how do you get there? I mean, are you meditating? Are you just, is that part of the journaling? Is there like post journaling later in the day? Like, because a lot of things you've been saying is like you're reacting to, for instance, like the multitasking thing. I love that you're calling it monotasking. I'm actually going to adopt that from now on. Like, I'm just going to tell my daughter, you need to monotask right now. Stop talking to your friends and finish the test. How do you get to these beautiful places of self-reflection?
I look at my life and I think I don't want to repeat the same mistakes, and I take a lot of risk. I do a lot of risky things in entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship is really personal development, kind of wrapped in the shell of the context of business, because your business is only going to grow as much as you, if you're the entrepreneur. It's a reflection of you. I believe that business is a mirror of you. So with my first business and this one, there's always these moments of like reflection, because you've got continuous problems to solve. And when you get to the next level, the problems become different or bigger. And you want those bigger problems because otherwise you're not growing. So I often think, what is my role in why we're stuck where we are? And I have to look at that and think, well, it's because I haven't altered how I handle communication with my team. I'm still doing it this way. And I just look at things that way, and I also look at relationships. I've had some failed relationships, and as probably most of us have, and I don't want to fail at the next relationship. So I zoom out and look at what was my role in this relationship, and I write books as well. So I'm working on like 2 other books now. One is about medical device cybersecurity, more for business, and one is about the story we tell ourselves, which the story we tell ourselves can be very limiting. It's about how we shift that story to one that serves us. So that forces me to do a lot of reflection as well when I write a book, because I believe a book should be transformational for the author as well as anybody that reads it.
Yeah, yeah. We're running up on the half hour here, Christian. You've been a phenomenal guest. I love this last quote. Entrepreneurship is personal development wrapped in business. I'm going to use that as well. 2 last questions that I ask every guest. First one is going back in time, and if you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Become an entrepreneur sooner.
Yes. Most people say something like this. Yeah, please continue.
Well, I think my problem is I grew up without stability and safety, so I sought that, and I thought that would come through a 9-to-5 job and the normal path. But I realized later that my kind of non-foundational and chaotic environment is a perfect environment to set me up for entrepreneurship.
Yeah, yeah, and look where you're at. It's amazing. Christian, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to pick up the book, where can they follow you, and learn all about it?
Yeah, they can find me on my website, christianespinosa.com. I'm on all social media pretty much. And my books are on Amazon and also on Audible as well.
Beautiful. Okay. Thanks so much for being on the show today, Christian. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Lance, for having me on.